Hello, everyone, and welcome to another year and another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm your host, Stu Hardy, joined as always by Derek Brissett. Derek, we've taken a fair bit of time off because, December, start of January in North America, it's usually very quiet. And apparently, 23 into 24 was like, you know what this time needs? Some havoc, some chaos.
Yeah.
Everyone loves chaos, especially around Christmas time. So, yeah, there's a lot of news that has happened over, I think, like the past 6 weeks since we last recorded. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, how has your holidays been? It's been a while since we've seen each other. So, did Santa give you any pleasant rugby gifts for Christmas?
Actually, yeah. Actually, let me tip this camera a little bit. My stepbrother Anthony actually got me this Rugby Canada scarf, which was I thought was cool. And then my girlfriend's dad did a like 2 week trip to New Zealand and Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And he brought me back an All Blacks toque. So
Ooh.
yeah, actually, I don't usually get rugby gifts, but this Christmas was actually not too bad for the rugby gift side of things. And I don't know. How about you? Did you get any cool rugby related fare?
Yes, my girlfriend's sisters got me some rugby gifts from shopmlr.com because they're currently based in the United States and um and with the end of the Arrows they were having a fire sale of
Mm,
everything must go, so they were able to get me the vintage edition of the jersey for 2023
yeah.
short as well, and I think it was the 2022 fan like city jersey. It's something that was only
Oh, the one with
available
like the
on
skyline on it.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
I'm
But the,
like,
the
oh, that's
teams never actually wore, but they were just
well,
like,
it was like fan wear, so
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know
it
what you're
makes sense.
talking
So,
about.
but like those mementos, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's the one thing, honestly, like I'm kind of really sad about now is I never, for whatever reason, never bought an Arrows jersey. And now I'm like, I need to get an Arrows jersey somehow.
oh man,
Um,
you have
yeah, I know
slipped
it's
up.
been too long. It's been too long because it was like every year I was kind of like, I'll get one next year or whatever. Or like I don't know, like at games and stuff, I always felt like I don't know. It's just in my own head, but sometimes I'm just like it feels weird like wearing a media pass and like going to like the fan gear booth and stuff. Even though I did do it, but I was just like I never really walked over there during a game. That was just something in my own head. I guess it probably wouldn't have been a weird thing to do at all. But like I never did it. And then like this year I was like, okay, I should buy one. And then they were like, we're gonna rebrand. And I was like, okay, I'll just buy the new one that's rebranded. And then Kitmas happened and I shed a tear because I'm
Mm.
like, oh right, there's no new Arrows jersey this year. Um I don't know what made me cry more during Kitmas this year, which I think we want to get into. If it
We will get
was,
into that
yeah.
soon
So I
enough.
think I'm
So
just not sure what made me cry more though. The fact that there was no Arrows jersey or having to look at San Diego's jersey. I'm not sure what actually made me shed more tears.
San Diego had a jersey. It was camouflage, so I couldn't see it.
I wish you couldn't see it.
Uh,
This thing stinks. It's
well, again, we'll get to Kitmas in a bit. That's we're gonna focus, north of the border, first of all, because in the time since we last recorded, Rugby Canada have released their strategic plan for 2024 to 27 and beyond. Now, in all fairness, they do this every Rugby World Cup cycle or so for the men, especially for the men's side. They did one, I think.
good to plan.
Yeah, I think they did one which was 2019 to 23, which had things like qualify for the World Cup, which obviously definitely happened. And so the strategic plan that has come out, the main focus seems to be on this thing called One Squad. So the idea of like we need to stop pitting the teams against each other, because this was something that did come up in the high performance review, that the 15s teams, men and women's, felt like they were fighting each other for resources. The 15s and sevens teams were fighting each other for resources. And So the things they mention are the three categories in the one squad ethos is support teams to win, be a leading sports organization, and expand financial capacity. So in by that they mean now in the article, I should say, they go into much greater depth of what each of these things means. Their overall goal is to build high-performing national teams, both in the 15s and sevens for men and women, provide training environments that achieve success, and be an exceptional national governing body. So it all focuses towards if we can do each of these three things, we can improve the standing of the teams, we can improve the position of Rugby Canada as a whole, and we're in a better position than we are now. The entire expanded high performance review does open with a letter from Sally Dennis, and she does mention, don't get me wrong, this plan won't fix rugby in Canada overnight. We are not that naive. However, it provides a credible platform and formula for doing so over a realistic time frame and sets us on an evolutionary course that will be transformational. However, one of the things they do want to be is ranked as a top 12 team. So they want the key outcomes to be women always in the top four and in contention to win the Rugby World Cup 2025, the men to return to the top 12 and qualify for Rugby World Cup 2027, and the men and women compete in the Olympic Games. Now,
A couple of those goals sound a little bit more achievable than others at
yeah,
this moment.
now, I mean, one of those goals has sort of been complete. I mean, the women are going to compete in the Olympic Games. The men, not so sure.
The thing is it's like, I mean, I know you probably want to go on here. Like the bullet points that you just kind of listed off is all, I don't know, it's all fairly generic. I'm like, yeah, the sevens team goal is to play at the Olympics. Yes, and yeah, it should be. Same with every
Yeah.
union in the world. It
Yeah.
should be.
Now,
Like,
admittedly, that is just like the bullet point objective.
that's
That
the
would be
bullet
the thing
point.
of like
Yeah.
if we can reach this target, we know we're on the right course.
Yeah.
The women's 15s always in the top four and in contention to win. I mean, you've seen their performance over the in 2023. I think
Sure.
the only real challenges they've had are from England and the Black Ferns,
But
which
that's
are
also
teams number one and two, which, that's the competition you want to have
that's
challenges with. So that I can get.
yeah, but
I've noticed it's the men's side, which
yeah.
is the
But
more optimistic
even on the
in
women's
it.
side though, like I think like if you're doing goal setting, like you're saying like the goal that they list is to be top four in the world. It's like, well, they're already top four. The women's already top four in the world. Why not make your goal to win the World Cup? Like, why not just write win the World Cup as like your next goal? Because it's like they're already there. The next step is winning the World Cup. Or
And that's
that's
a
the next
fair
step.
point.
That's the next goal. Like, why not just say that? You're already there, right? Like that's it to me, that's what the next goal should have been. Like it's like, I don't know, to me, that kind of feels like, at least on the women's side, it's kind of just like okay, like as long as we're top four we're happy, which is fine, right? But and like you should want to be top four and stuff, but it's like you're already there, like you already got to the medal rounds of a World Cup. Like your next step isn't being top four, your next step is winning the World Cup, right? And like that's kind of how I view that. um like the men's side, I get being like initial step one goal, it's like you want to get, like even that, it's like you want to get back to the top 12, and it's like it took them 10 years to fall out of the top 12. Like
Hmm.
it's going to take a while to climb back. As you mentioned, like the strategic plan does mention not that it's not going to happen overnight, but I'm like, for that, I'm almost like, it almost feels like the women's side of the way they wrote this goal isn't dreaming big enough, but the men's side seems like it was dreaming too big when they wrote.
Yeah.
It's like, why not make the goal to be like, well, let's just like let's get back to top 20 in the world, or like not
Yeah.
even top 20, like let's do some steps in this process, like let's get back to top 20, let's get back to the World Cup, like let's do that and then target the top 12 or whatever,
Yeah.
like in a weird way. Whereas like the women, it's like the women's goal the women's team, I think, is at the point where it's like their goal should be win. Like that's the women's goal right now to me is where I think the women's team should be at right now. At least if I'm in charge of the goal setting for them.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can see like both sides within, as in if you look at France, you look at New Zealand and England, they've professionalized women's competition,
Yeah.
and therefore they already have the step ahead. And if it's just like, and if the idea is like, well, Australia, they've started to professionalize their W series, and you've got other nations that are basically coming up. Even just staying fourth will become the challenge. It's not the challenge now because they're obviously already there, but it's like retaining
So
that capabilities. Anyway, I don't want to belabor on this point too long. The other thing is one that focus on, they want to expand financial capacity. That includes a portfolio of major events with the idea of hosting up to 4 major events each year to deliver significant economic and societal impact to Canadian cities. They want to engage with World Rugby to retain the Canada Sevens and innovate the event design. There's also talking about expanding broadcast partnerships. I remember when we were watching the men's qualifiers
mhm.
for the World Cup, and they were beyond a subscription service that you had to pay for the game specifically, and it was just an absolute mess. And people were like, "Why is this not on TSN?" Just so much easier and simpler. So obviously they're doing that.
Mhm.
No, they want to get a clear sponsorship structure in place. I think they've already begun doing that with like the women's 15s as and I think just women's 15s at the moment. I think they'll obviously expand to sevens when um it gets closer to the Olympics and stuff, but we've seen how like NFP is the sponsor of the women's 15s, and they have their own um, sponsor partnerships. And if they couldn't expand that similar to for the men's and for the men's and women's sevens, but I know that their sponsorship and funding is also included with the um, Olympic avenues as well. So, um, you know, remains to be seen, and as well be a leading sports organization. So they want to have constant communication with governing bodies and have a safe, trustworthy, high performing culture, which is again something that they've been flagged at in the high performance review of saying that there was no culture for the high performance and
Yeah.
players didn't feel safe. There was a lack of trust between players, coaches, and staff, and so I
Mhm.
think I think we can look at this one way and say like this is very neutral, generic terms, and in a results-based environment, which is the environment of professional sport, you need to have something coming back to show you that things are going on. But like we've said before, Rugby Canada have been ignoring problems that have been there since the turn of professionalism. They are in a 30-year hole. It's not going to be overnight that they're, back into, the top 12 for the men and, one of the highest regarded rugby organizations in the world. So, so on the other hand, I can say like now they've actually written out what they intend to do. It means
And
that we can hold them accountable for when
they don't do it.
they're not performing it and reward them when they are. Because, I feel like it's easy to criticize and say you're doing it wrong all the
Yeah.
time. But if they are actually doing stuff, then, hands up, I'll give them their laurels when they're due.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, there's nothing in the plan that's bad, that's negative, that I don't like. I'm nitpicking like some of the wording on it, but
Yeah.
like overall, like there's nothing there that you don't disagree with. It's like, I mean, you could probably boil it down to like, yeah, it's like we want our teams to win, we want to be a better organization, and we want to make more money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Can't argue
those are
with
the
that.
goals. Yeah.
No.
Those like right, and it's like you can't really argue with it. It's just one of those things where it's like I think the view on Rugby Canada from a lot of the public right now is a little soured.
Hmm.
Right. So it's like I think in a lot of ways it's just like it's one thing to put this out, right? It's another thing entirely to like execute it. So like let's just hope they're able to execute it and make it work. Because
Yeah,
I would love to see Rugby Canada back to being a top 12 men's team and have the women's team constant have the women's team winning World Cups and stuff like we
yeah,
want to
of
see this,
course.
right? Like
And like, there were some things that, may not come to fruition. The obviously that men returning to the top 12 by
it's gonna take a
2027
while. That's gonna take a while.
is
That's not happening.
that may be the and beyond part of this
Yeah.
plan. But then there's other things like if um the Canada Sevens gets a contract for the next 10 years, then that's a job well done. That's if and
Yeah.
also regular international games for the men's and women's teams
And
in Canada.
would be good
Again,
too.
that's going to be far
Yeah.
greater than, get it.
The goals aren't bad. It's just
Yeah,
goals aren't bad. It's just
we want them now. We want them
not
now.
even
It's what
it's
we
not even
want.
that we want them now though. It's just like, yeah, like we you gotta do it though. Like
Yeah, you got to
we
put the
gotta
work
do it.
in. You got
Yeah.
to get it. Okay, now, all right, we're just gonna have a little bit of fun because one thing that is mentioned in the performance plan is their high performance hubs that they want to have across the nation. And the target is to have four hubs by 2025 and eight by 2029. So, Derek, what you and I are going to do now is we are going to decide where these four hubs by 2025 should be
Mm.
and eight by 2029. So I'm going to give you the first two. Where are the two places in Canada that you would locate these hubs?
Well, I think because there was that other document that came out, I think BC Rugby News had it. That was like
Yes.
they do want to focus on the women's that like initial focus of these high performance hubs is going to be the women's team.
Hmm.
So if that's the case, the first one's easy. It's the one that already exists on Vancouver Island. Like that's an easy one. And then the second one, I'd probably put it in Montreal, just because there's a decent chunk of the women's team that's from Quebec. Um, and it
Hmm.
covers a little bit of the eastern parts. Plus, Rugby Canada also needs to grow their brand in that province a little bit. So why not?
Yeah. So, for a city perspective, would you just say Victoria for the first, so on Vancouver Island?
Well, like where it is
Yeah.
right now, like the current Al Sharon training center.
Okay.
Yeah, like yeah, in Langford, right? Like it's
Yeah.
where it is right now. Like
Yeah.
that's one. That's one.
That's one. That's going to be the easiest one to
That,
do of
that
just
is the
like
easiest one, the one that exists.
the Alcheron High Performance Center slash hub. That's all you have to do
Yeah,
is
no,
add
it's the one
those
that
four
exists.
characters. Done.
Yeah, it's the one that
Um,
exists. That's the easiest one. It
uh,
saves money too.
okay, so I'm gonna pick like the obvious population area means we have to have one in Toronto.
Yeah.
We've also, talked about how schemes in the city have helped female players go and perform at colleges and university and even get picked by national squads.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree with that. I'm also going to say this is going to be somewhat left field, but at the same time not. Halifax. Now we have the Atlantic Selects rebranded to the Atlantic
Yeah.
Privateers. And we've talked about the interest of the Wanderers ground getting redeveloped into a
Mm,
multi-sport stadium that can hold rugby games as well as soccer and Canadian
yeah.
football. And that seems like the iron is hot, and this is the time to
Yeah.
strike. So
The
I'd say
only
Halifax
all right.
as so yeah, we'll
Only
have
the only thing I
Lang.
don't like about these selections right now, though, is it ignores a huge part of the country with
Oh,
man.
absolutely. That's the thing. This is, but
But here's
again, we've just picked like the four that we are gonna do first. Now I'm gonna ask you, Derek, where are the next four places that
the next
should
four.
have the 2029 hub?
Well, like yeah, like if that was the first four, like so, like initially I was gonna say, if you were gonna let me pick all four, I was gonna say Ottawa instead
Yeah.
because I think like Ottawa could be a good geographical split area where it's like you can get players from Quebec and Ontario to go to Ottawa,
Hmm.
depending
Yep.
on that. And then you could also have like players from Quebec go to Halifax if they wanted to too. So I thought
Yeah.
Ottawa might be a good hub thing as well. You got to have one like Calgary might be interesting because there's such a big national like a national team, like Canada wide, all different sports. There's a big like Canadian national sports organization presence in Calgary, although it is more
Yeah.
for winter sports. So
Mm.
Calgary might be interesting. I don't know. I'll go Calgary and hope you say somewhere in Winnipeg or somewhere in Manitoba or Saskatchewan to round it out.
Somewhere in Winnipeg.
Somewhere, yeah.
Oh,
I was gonna say, yeah, like
yeah. I'll pick East Winnipeg.
Yeah, somewhere in
I
Winnipeg, yeah.
yeah, I think like Rugby Manitoba
They should just,
is
yeah, they should just
obviously
be
has
spread
its
out
hub
throughout.
as well.
They should just be evenly spread out throughout the country. Pick major cities.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, because part of me wants to pick Vancouver, but at the same time, it's like if you have
Close to
Vancouver
Victoria.
Island, and there's already enough high performance clubs in Vancouver. We're getting like the Vancouver Highlanders as well, so there's another avenue to go down. So now, admittedly, that's the men's team as opposed to women,
Hey,
so I
yeah.
think that's a bit
I think the big thing for me, wherever those 4 to 8 hubs end up, they got to be in like major cities, be
yeah.
in like fun places to live,
Yeah. I
like across Canada.
well, that's it. You say fun places to live, and then we have Ottawa and Calgary. So,
What's
um,
wrong with Ottawa and Calgary?
have you been, have you been?
I have not been to Calgary actually. I've been to
Well,
Ottawa. What's wrong with Ottawa?
I don't know. It's good for a day, and unless you're in politics, and unless you call the team called the Ottawa Politicians, and then
Wow,
who knows what
I don't
happens.
know why you're
Um,
researching Ottawa right now.
well, I'd say
Or
yeah,
just new stadium that can play
yeah.
rugby in it too. Like,
I'm gonna pick I'm gonna pick Winnipeg as well as one of the like secondary locations for the hub just to have something else in the prairies between Manitoba and
yeah,
Saskatchewan.
I
I think like if there's going to be a further expansion of like maybe two more hubs, then say yeah, we can put a hub in Saskatchewan, but
yeah,
I think Winnipeg would cover both. And then just again, because population decides, I would pick Ontario again, and I'd pick Hamilton. I
that's too
think,
close to Toronto. For a national thing, it's too close to Toronto. That's a 30 to 40 minute drive from Toronto. That's
yeah,
too
I
close.
understand, but again, I'm using this as like a secondary location, and
Uh,
it'll
you can
be like
have one.
later on.
I- If you're doing them in Ontario, you're doing one in like Toronto and Ottawa. Those are the two that would go in Ontario. And then
I
like
don't,
every other province gets one.
I don't know.
Well, not every other province, but like
Yeah,
yeah. I think like if you go, I think to go back to like if the idea of the four, like the old like Canadian Rugby Championship where you had BC, the Prairie Wolf Pack that was like Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the
yeah,
Ontario Blues, and then the Atlantic Rock, right? Like those are the four regions you got to cover. Um,
yeah,
the women's team being included in that, I think makes it a lit. I'm more interested in putting something in Montreal or Quebec City or anywhere in Quebec, really,
mm,
because there is such a big, like, there's a big portion of that team that does come from that province. So, like, I think that's helpful for them. Um,
yeah.
but like, I don't know. There's a lot of options. It's honestly, it's going to be whatever makes the most financial sense. It's like anything,
That
whatever
is
money.
correct. But I think yeah, Montreal, Victoria, Toronto, and Halifax seem like a good starting point, and obviously the second four
Yeah,
will be a decision later down the line. But I'm over the full strategic plan. I'm feeling positive, especially if they can get things working. They said having a good relationship with youth sports and getting, I think the goal is also to get like the men's
yeah,
rugby and officially recognized by youth sports. They want to have good relationships with universities. Obviously, universities do have access to a lot of gym equipment that would cater towards like a high
yeah.
performance environment. But yeah, again, it's one thing to write it down, it's another thing to put it into action. This isn't going to be overnight. It is planned for the next 3 years and beyond.
Mhm.
So we will watch with bated breath. We will see how it all comes to be. And we're hoping, and we're being cautiously optimistic and hoping for success. All right, now let's keep it with Rugby Canada. We're going to focus on the men's 15s for a moment because the news announcement came out last week that Phil Mack has been appointed the attack coach for the men's national 15s team,
Right.
and he is moving to a technical lead for the Pacific Pride. He has been the head coach for the Pacific Pride, and when you have something like technical lead, does that mean like they're technically leading the team? But Rugby Canada did put out a press release as they are looking for a new head coach for the Pacific Pride, as well as being the head coach for the men's under 20s as well. So Phil Mack moving into a dual role with the Pride, and Rugby Canada looking for another dual role head coach. Well, and when that gets filled, we will let you know.
Are you excited about this?
I think that there's a big swell of support for the men's team because of this. Phil,
Yeah.
um, decorated Canadian player
Yeah.
and moved into the coaching role in 2019 with the Pride, became the head coach in 2021. As from everything I've heard, he's been doing like
Won,
wonders for the
won an
team.
MLR Shield with Seattle
Won
as a
two
player,
MLR Shields with, yeah,
player coach, and that's
and
as a coach for those teams. Um,
yeah, and yeah. So I mean,
see,
yeah. From what I've seen, everyone seems positive about this,
I
and as well as a Canadian coaching Canadians on a national level as well. I think
I know. I
people are great to see that as well.
see that's the thing though, is it's like that's why I feel like I feel kind of weird about this. Um, like Phil Mack is honestly is like one of my favorite players ever. I
Hmm.
think there's probably a lot of Canadians that would probably share that. I think he is deserving of this promotion, but like you were kind of just talking about with the high performance strategy, like a big issue that the high performance review and the new strategic plan seem to be addressing is like the culture within the organization as a
Mm.
whole. And like, at least from the men's team perspective, the two biggest moves that have happened recently is re-signing the head coach, right?
Hmm.
That everybody unanimously thought that was a great idea, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Thought that was a great idea. Okay. Yeah, so like obviously the Kingsley Jones thing that was, that was received very poorly by a lot of people. And it's like the second move is to promote a guy from within the organization.
Mm.
And I know that that guy is Phil Mack and everybody loves Phil Mack. And I'm not trying to like knock Phil Mack in this question, but my question is like, where does this culture change come from if
Mm.
all we're doing is rehiring the people that are already in the organization and then those people are promoting from within the organization? Like we're just you get you know what I mean? Like Kingsley Jones,
Yeah.
let's not forget, like we're saying there's a culture problem with Rugby Canada. Kingsley Jones is going to be one of the guys that drives that culture, but he's successful in the culture that from the outside looking in, we all say is failing.
Yeah.
Phil Mack is a guy that's been part of Rugby Canada forever, right?
Yeah.
Played for Kingsley Jones,
Mm.
coaching within the same organization as Kingsley Jones, probably just got promoted by Kingsley Jones as well, right? Is that a different enough mindset coming in, right? And it's just like Phil Mack
Mm.
is a beloved figure in Canadian rugby, and I get that everybody loves him, but I'm just wondering, like, where's the culture change? Who is going to be the driving force behind the culture change if there's like nobody new coming
Mm.
in? And like the two biggest new guys coming in, Nathan Bombrys and Stephen Aboud, have done really nothing so far to prove that they kind of think the same way as the old regime, right?
Mm.
And like
Yeah.
that's my concern. And it's not, and to be clear, this isn't a knock on Phil Mack specifically, like as a
Yeah.
person, or to say that he doesn't deserve a chance to try to coach the national team, or whatever. But it's just like, where are these new ideas coming from? right? And like even like over the break, like I saw like some social media posts suggesting like that Cudmore should come back to the team. And again,
Yeah.
my response to that would be the exact same. And it's like, why are we just trying to bring back all the people that have already worked for Rugby Canada? Like, let's,
Mm.
you know what I mean? And again, this isn't a knock on Phil Mack. It's not,
Mm.
or whatever. It's not, but like, I'm just kind of like, we got to hire a new coach at some
Yeah.
point. There's got to be some form of new voice in that
Yeah.
locker room, right? And like right now, it's like the two biggest moves that have been made since we're all agreeing is that we need culture. If you take out the names, right,
Yeah.
are we re-signed the coach,
Yeah.
right? We re-signed the underperforming head coach, and we
Yeah.
promoted somebody from within the organization. My only question is just where's the change? Like, who's the driving factor behind the change? Like, where's the change coming from? That's all I'm trying to ask here.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very valid concern to have. It's one I didn't really think of. And I think it's just because people have seen Phil
It's
Mack
because it's
play.
Phil Mack, right?
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of like any other team in any other professional sport that hires like a beloved player to be like the next,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like the Edmonton Oilers just did it. They need to turn around their season. So what they one of the assistant coaches they just hired was Paul Coffey. They hired the legendary player to come in. All the fans love the guy. Like he can't do anything wrong, right?
Yeah.
All the fans love the guy because he helped them win a bunch of cups in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
It feels like it's kind of this. I think it's a great PR thing or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not to say that Phil Mack does not deserve this. I don't want that to be
Yeah.
misconstrued, right? But I'm just concerned that there's no one new. I
So
want someone
my
new.
counter argument, not using names, using
Yeah,
so he's the head coach of the developmental team with the whole
yeah,
intention of getting these players into professional environments, including getting them to represent
the
the
natural.
national team.
Yeah,
Now he's basically moved up
yeah,
into a role that, suits him because I think was he brought in as attack coach for the Pacific Pride in
yeah. And then he became
2019?
the head coach when.
Yeah, so he's basically so for the past 4 years, he's had some influence on the guys that have been going into MLR, going
Yeah,
to the Arrows and stuff, and have been giving the recommendation of like this guy should be can be picked for the national team. He's been doing well
yeah,
in the Pride, he's been doing well for his club and stuff. And then to have that continuation of support in a physical form when you get to the national team, there are going to be guys who are going to basically have been coached by Phil Mack for, now
yeah.
5 years or have his influence, I should
You're
say, for
right.
the past 5 years.
You're right.
And I can say from a
Right.
player's perspective, not an organizational, from a player's perspective, that continuation and having someone in your corner or the
Hmm.
feeling of someone in your corner is a great thing to have. Again,
I can
from an
counter.
organizational point of view, this goes against
All right.
um your the
Fine.
Sanson point. But
I think
yeah,
the counter for that though is also we're all in agreement that the culture needs to change.
yeah,
So you promoted the coach that's teaching the young guys the culture that we all agree that needs to change.
yeah.
How's the culture
Again,
going to
again,
change?
I'm going from like I'm talking from a
I
player's
get it.
perspective, not
I get it.
organizational one.
It does make. So here's my okay. I guess I'll sum it up like this.
Yeah,
It makes perfect sense to promote the coach of the development team to the national team.
yeah,
Makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense to do that with Phil Mack as well.
yeah.
But where's that? But like those are also guys that have succeeded in the culture that needs to change. So
Yeah, and
where is the new ideas coming in
yeah.
from?
I
Right? Because
this is the I would love to see a new like I don't know who the defense coach is going to be.
that
I
guy's got to
know,
be new at this
yeah,
point. I'm like that guy's
that
got to
has
be
to be a new guy. That has to be someone that you have,
uh,
worked with, like Phil Mack has worked with, maybe has a reference in New Zealand and stuff, and it's a Kiwi wants to come over and or maybe some of the guys who went to play in um, the New Zealand Club Championship
Yeah.
this past year. Maybe they have a recommendation of who can come over and be like the national defense coach.
Yeah.
These are all questions that Rugby Canada needs to answer, not us.
Yeah.
But I think we can say at this point now we need a new outside perspective in the coaching staff.
Yeah, like I don't like, and again, to be clear, like I don't. Again, this is not against Phil Mack specifically, but like you suggesting, like okay, like a defense coach, other coaches. I think like there needs to be like I have not worked for Rugby Canada ever in my life. Voice
Yeah,
influence in the coaching staff right now,
yeah,
right? Like there needs to be somebody that can come in, look at the structure, look at how like trainings run, look at how everything is done, right? And then be like, we can change this and this and this. Right? Or even, hey, you're doing this really well, but this can be done better. Like to go through that. I think like the thing that we said earlier before the resigning of Kingsley Jones is that the organization, at least on the men's 15 side, should get like torn down,
mm,
right? And if you still agree, like I don't know, do you still agree with that or whatever? Like
yeah,
it should, right?
yeah,
But it's a lot of the same people that are still involved in Rugby Canada. So like I'm just like basically like right now we have the new strategic plan, but we're trusting a lot of the people that were involved in Rugby Canada in one capacity or another to bring them back out of the hole that they were a part of Rugby Canada while they were digging that hole.
yeah,
And we're asking them to like we're asking the same people that dug the hole to climb
mm,
out of the hole and to start filling in the hole,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
You know
I
what I
get
mean?
I get
Like
where you're
that's
coming from.
all. That's my only concern. Like I want new faces in
Yeah,
again. It's not against Phil Mack. It does make sense
yeah,
technically to promote the attack coach, promote the coach from the development team to the national team. I just want to know where the culture change is going to come from. If
yeah. And
we just
I agree. I think
keep
we do need
hiring
to.
from within.
Yeah,
That's all I want to know.
yeah. Well, we'll see going forward. Again, we need outside names, outside faces coming in to change that culture. Well, we've talked about something that's definitely been confirmed. Now let's talk about a rumor that has been circulating, and that is that Scotland are due to play Canada in Ontario in 2024. That is the extent of the rumor. We don't know anything further from that. Now, through the rumor mill that I've heard, is that the men's team are going to play an international game in Toronto this year at York Lions Stadium. Now, you may be wondering why York Lions and not BMO, uh, BMO Field. And the reason for that is because
Money.
Toronto FC exists and they would likely be playing a game in the MLS at the same time. This was the same issue that happened in 2019 when Canada were playing Leinster
Not
and they
really.
have to play it
The
at Tim
issue is
Hortons
that
Field instead.
BMO Field is expensive to run.
That as well,
That's the issue.
because MLSE, I think you may have heard of them, Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment.
AKA the
Yeah,
most profitable, largest sports organization in the country
yeah.
owns that stadium.
Well, they don't
The two
own.
teams
Technically, the city
they
of
own,
Toronto is the owner of it, but
own it.
MLSE have the cash to splash apparently, and
Uh,
so and also there's huge restrictions on vendors and things like that. So not a it's not going to be like the profitable choice to make. I
yeah.
think unless it's a high caliber tier one side. So back in 2021 when England was supposed to be touring, they were going to play at BMO Field against Canada, but obviously that never happened, sadly. But yeah, so if Scotland are going to play at York Line Stadium, I'd be eager to hear that news. Hopefully, sooner the better, so we can book tickets, get ready to go. All right, we're going to move on from the men's 15s to sevens. As in the time that we've been taken off, there have been two rounds of the HSBC 7 series in Dubai and in Cape Town. So we'll start in Dubai. Um, for the women, it was pretty good. Finished fourth overall. For the men, not as good. They finished plumb last in 12th. Then they moved on to Cape Town, which was the weekend after. Women again doing well, not to the same heights. Sixth in Cape Town, and the men, after Dubai, they were seen as like the bottom feeders of the pack. They went up against New Zealand in the pool stages, and everyone was like, "Ah, okay, I can see where this is going." So they beat the New Zealand Sevens team in the pool stages, made it to the quarterfinals, and ultimately finished seventh. So a fantastic turnaround for the men in Cape Town, which means that the current standings are that the men are ninth and the women are fifth. Now, I'm not entirely sure about this in that the because of the way that sevens is going to work, if it's only if like 12th place gets included in like the knockout stages when the games go to Madrid for the final round or not. So yeah. I've just checked on the Sevens website. It says Madrid will play host to the high stakes relegation playoff competition where teams ranked ninth to 12th will join the top four teams from the World Rugby Challenge Sevens Challengers, with the top four place teams securing their place at the HSBC Sevens 2025. All right. So Canada are currently on the cusp of that, and they have one, two, three, four rounds essentially to improve on that and get at least up to eighth. For example, um, France are currently the eighth team on 10th, and Samoa are the 17th on 11th. So at the moment, very close and very easy to turn this all around. Um, because their competition in 10th, 11th, and 12th at the moment are the USA, Great Britain, and Spain. So Great Britain and Spain, they're also facing those teams in the Olympic playoffs, which are going to be held in Monaco later, I think like a month before the Olympics as well.
Man,
So
what a repechage tournament that is.
yeah, that's going to be fun. But for now, the focus needs to be getting into the knockout stages, getting a bit further ahead. Canada, they finished further ahead than France and Samoa in the Cape Town Sevens. So when they make their visit down to Perth, which I believe is this weekend, yes, the Friday to the Sunday, they will be looking to make it to that playoff stage again, denying the other teams getting a bit for they need to be ideally finishing more like the women fourth and sixth at the moment than in the bottom. They need to basically keep out the bottom four. Look, lads, we had this issue last year. The higher you finish, the better it is for all of us, and we don't have to, have a heart attack every time you play Kenya again. I mean, come on, it's not fair, man. It's not fair.
Welcome to
Uh,
being a Canadian rugby fan. I hope you're enjoying
yeah.
your citizenship. This
Thank
is
you.
what it's
Yeah.
like. Yeah, we didn't talk about that. Congrats on that. But you're now officially a Canadian citizen. So welcome to being watching rugby on the constant verge of having a heart attack and being in pain. You should be used to it. You cheer for Wales. Your best player plays for the NFL now, so you should be fine.
Yeah, well, I said, I'm becoming a Canadian citizen, and he hopped on the plane over, but I think he was meant to go to the CFL, not the NFL.
You should
You
have.
know, bit of confusion with the agents, but you make mistakes, you learn from it. And we go again. Anyway, let's bring this back to North America and to the MLR because there has been a lot of news coming out of the MLR since we last talked.
Yeah.
First of all, the most important thing, Rugby New York ceased operations as well. They will not play in the 2024 season. Something I do appreciate is that Old Glory DC put out a press release and talking about their financial stability as well, because obviously there's a lot of concern. I think a lot of teams put out small press release saying, oh, it's sad that New York and Toronto aren't there, but our team's doing so well and it's great. Old Glory had the decency to explain why Atlanta relocated, why the Arrows folded, why New York folded, because um, for Atlanta and Toronto, it was essentially like the same ultimate cause, which is their very enthusiastic financial contributor passed away, and there was no one there specifically to pick up the slack to keep a team in that location. New York, they admitted like New York is incredibly expensive to have any kind of team. That's why the two New York-based NFL teams are not in New York; they're in New Jersey. That's how, and yeah, they call themselves the Jets and the Giants call themselves New York, and yeah, not even in the state boundaries. So make of that what you will. But I do appreciate that. I think sometimes you just need
Yeah.
to explain to people why it's not happened, and leaving it up to, oh yeah, we're sorry about this, but we're doing great.
All
But
right.
it's like, but I thought the teams have a collective ownership in the league. So if one team's not doing well, doesn't that mean that all teams are? So yeah, all glory DC, much appreciated.
Congrats.
Um,
We have now gone through one of 68,000 league updates
yes.
since we last
Let
recorded.
me move on to the next.
Yeah.
So, the competition update. I was originally going to say there are going to be 11 teams and there's going to be no divisions or playoffs or no divisions or conferences. That changed last week with the addition of Anthem Rugby Carolina or Anthem RC,
Mhm.
which is going to be a unique team in the sense of MLR. So instead of having a financial contributor in the sense of an ownership, it is basically being financed by World Rugby and co-owned by World Rugby and USA Rugby. And the entire plan of Anthem Rugby Carolina is to promote players into professional environments to improve the USA national team to get help them to qualify for the 2027 Rugby World Cup and to ensure that they are competitive for the 2031 Rugby World Cup that they will host
Yeah.
in the United States. As a result, this means that there are 12 teams, and we have the continuation of the East and West conferences.
Mhm.
The main change being that Chicago is moving to the Eastern Conference. The playoffs have yet to be determined as of the recording. There's only been changes coming from the competition itself. There's been nothing from MLR about if the playoffs are going to revert back to um, eliminators and conference finals, then the championship final, or if they are going to progress with the top eight teams that they announced back when they decided to do divisions. Um, there's a number of issues I see with Anthem Rugby Carolina. The main one is there's not going to be any Canadians on it, so they are never going to win anything.
Nothing.
And secondly, that because they were announced so late, they missed kitmas.
They did.
So the league announced the 11 teams of with their release of the home and away kits, kind of because San Diego didn't do that. They did their military series instead. So still don't
I
know
don't think that is. I think that's their jersey.
if that is their jersey, then it's
Terrible.
even worse.
That's totally their jersey. I don't know why you don't think that's their jersey.
Well, they label it as military series, and none of the other teams have like a specific name to go with the jersey. So that's
Yeah.
why there's like the question mark
I
of
yeah.
is this their jersey or
Okay.
not?
I agree with you. I think this jersey stinks.
Yeah,
Camo is real ugly, man. Um,
yeah,
there is a like the reason like I get it if you were doing like you said like a one-off like military appreciation day.
yeah,
Like I get the camel thing. Camo serves a very practical purpose. The purpose of camo is to not look good. It's to not be seen at all. Like it's to blend in. It's not
yeah.
anything. And therefore it's a terrible sports jersey thing to have. right? Because it doesn't look, it's not supposed to look good. Even in the
Yeah.
military, when they have to go to like a ceremony or something where they need to look good, they wear like suits and
Hmm.
stuff. They have a different uniform. They don't wear camo to like big military ceremonies. They have like other dress that they wear. Um,
Yeah.
Camo never looks good on anything at all. That's
Yeah.
my little
But of the 22 kits that were shown, and
yeah.
again, these are just computer images, so obviously it'll look different when players are actually wearing them.
Yeah.
What is your favorite kit?
I think yeah, like I think my I want to give my favorite kit to Chicago.
Yeah.
I love how clean it looks. You got the white and green hoops on the one, the solid green on the other. You got the collars. You got a couple little nods to the city of Chicago on like the sleeves inside the collar, the little fine details that make kits really good. And honestly, like I'm giving it my number one spot just because like
Hmm.
the other two kits that I thought blew me away again were just New England and NOLA. Um,
Yeah.
and
I've got to say, like, after what is it now? Since
they're the
2018,
yeah, they're the best in the league.
we've
Yeah.
been saying like, what is the point of having this Mardi Gras kit and wearing it for
Oh,
like numerous games?
perfect. They
See,
upgraded.
and
Yeah.
just calling it, oh, it's just our Mardi Gras kit. Oh, we're just gonna we have our gold and white kit and our gold and black kit, and it's like the Mardi Gras kit is is everyone's favorite kit. Just make it your alternate.
Yeah.
And now they've finally done that, and
And
I
they gave it a
am.
collar. And they gave it a collar. Which
And
is
to be honest, and on all the shorts, because these are Kappa shorts, they have the Kappa logo three times down
oh,
each side. Even the away
looks
kit on the Mardi Gras kit is the same Mardi Gras colors
yeah,
for the
the colors.
logo.
So good.
Fantastic.
It's so good. Yeah. I think to me though, the biggest thing with New England and NOLA especially, maybe even like Chicago. Chicago is maybe just a little too new for this comment as a
Yeah.
team entering their second season in the league. But like I think one of the things um is New England and NOLA have been in the league for a while now. NOLA obviously being an original team, but it's like they have locked down what their brand is so well, like to like
Yeah.
they look like the quarters jersey, slight tweaks. This year, I think I actually like it better because I think they made the number more visible. Good tweak. The box, the added box, it makes it the number pop a little bit more. I think that's a really good tweak, but it's like they've been rocking the quarters for a while now. It looks real good. It's a color scheme that nobody else in the league has. No other rugby team I can really think of as being gold and white at all.
Yeah.
No other rugby team I can think of definitely rocks the color scheme for the Mardi Gras jersey. But
Yeah.
it's like it's something that's unique to them. It's so perfectly identifiable. And same goes to New England, where it's like they locked in what a New England Free Jacks jersey is going to look like. Minor tweaks change up the stripe pattern every year a little bit, but it's like it's never like a far departure. It's two teams that I'm just like they know what their brand is and they are sticking with it. Like they developed it. It's like it evolves a little bit, but they have a great understanding of what that is. And then like there's other teams in the league that I don't think are necessarily at that level. With you know going into it and stuff like I don't know the one thing like we finally got the LA franchise. I hate
Yeah.
the fact that they don't have a name. Um,
Yeah.
I like it doesn't work.
RFCLA.
Yeah, it just to me it doesn't work. It doesn't. I don't think it gives fans that aren't from LA anything to identify with. Um, the reason I think I kind of realized that too, as I said at the top of the show, my girlfriend's dad, Mike, he gave me an All Blacks toque, and I was
Hmm.
thinking about why I love the All Blacks, and I realized it's got nothing to do with New Zealand. I don't cheer for New Zealand; I cheer for the All Blacks, and it's kind of a different thing if you really think about it.
Mm.
Right, and it's like that's why I think it is an important to have that extra brand for people to latch onto. I've been talking to some of my Australian friends as they follow the NFL. You ask them what their favorite team is, they do not tell you a city. They tell you they don't say Green Bay, they'll say the Packers, right?
Yeah.
Packers, Cowboys, Patriots, Colts, whatever that team is, they say the team name. They don't say what city they're from. If you're not from the city, the team name, the logo, that branding is what you latch on to as a fan. Um, we're now an MLR. We're Toronto Arrows fans. We now don't have a team. I'm
Mhm.
not going to cheer for Dallas. I'm not going to cheer for Utah. I'm not going to cheer for New England, but I might cheer for the Jackals, the Warriors, or the Free Jacks.
Mm.
LA gives me nothing. That's why I
Yeah.
don't like that. That's why I don't like the team name. Also, every LA team, the L and the A are of equal prominence in the logo.
Yeah.
Like the Dodgers, the Clippers, Lakers, the Kings, every LA team, the L and the A are of equal prominence. This team looks like they play in a city that starts with the letter A. The L is way too small, and the pictures of Jason Dom and those guys wearing it with like the shirts that had it looks like an A from a distance. I think that was kind of a miss too on the grander kitmas scale. That was
Yeah.
not your question at all. That was just a random ass rant. That was not your question. Back to you and
Eh,
on topic.
All right.
What was
So,
your favorite kit? You asked me for one kit. I gave you three and then ranted about a kit that I don't like.
all
So,
right. My favorite kit is probably the Chicago away kit.
yeah.
Again, solid green. Love the green color as well.
Yep.
If I had to pick any others, I'd say Nola's Mardi Gras kit, obviously, and
It's
I'd say
easy.
New,
It's easy
yeah,
this year.
and New England's home kit. I do find it funny that New England's away color is red,
Mm.
considering that the Free Jacks are named after the soldiers that fought against the British, which were the Union Jacks. The British wore mainly red, and so they're being named of the opposition to the British, but wearing the British colors. Um, Maybe think that one through. Uh,
The Union Jack and the Star Spangled Banner have the same colors, right?
I know it's basically treason that
Yeah.
New England are wearing red now. It's absolutely despicable. It's basically it's the color of old England, not New England, old England.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to be, I think that New England's white kit from previous seasons, I think that just looks a lot
New England
better.
has not missed since their first year in the league.
No, they've missed once, and that is it's either like their city or their vintage jersey of last year, which was, oh, we're gonna do it as like baseball, and everyone just collective went, oh.
Oh, yeah,
Like,
that's true. I
because
forgot about that one.
when you're used to hitting home runs and grand slams,
Yeah.
hitting a single's like, oh,
Yeah. I think the
I
only
mean,
other kit
okay,
that I kind of want to mention, I think, was
yeah,
Dallas's, just because I kind of like that they took such a big swing with it, but I
yeah,
also don't really like that I immediately was like, that's a Dallas Stars jersey.
yeah.
So it's a little tough.
Yeah,
I kind of
I
like
get.
the big swing, but it's a little too close to it.
Well, yeah. Sometimes you just got to swing for the fences, and
Yeah,
it's either going to be
playing a
hit or miss. But
playing a baseball safe.
anyway, let's stop talking about kits. Let's talk about Canadians. Because there has been the dispersal draft that happened since we last recorded. Now, I think it's just easier for us to list off where
Guys, I
Canadians are in the league at the moment.
yeah.
So Anthem has no one, so they're not going to win anything. Houston don't have any Canadians listed, so they're not going to be lifting the shield this year. I'm sorry, that's just how it works. The team with the most Canadians gets to lift the shield. We go to Chicago, where
And
Jason.
now that the Arrows aren't in the league, yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
congrats New England back to back. New
Mm.
England.
All right, so we have Chicago. They picked up Mason Flesh in the draft. They picked up Lucas Rumble as a free agent, and they had already done the trade to get Jason Higgins.
Mhm.
In Dallas, Liam Murray, Dewell Coetzee, Kyle Steves, they return Carl Hunger and Brock Gallagher, new signings, and Mitch Richardson and Nick Ben were picked up in the expansion draft.
Dispersal draft.
Um, Dispersal draft, sorry. Um, over in Miami, Shane O'Leary got picked up as part of the expansion draft. Now I'm
Especially
getting it
there
right.
we go. There's a lot of
And
drafts. It's been a busy offseason.
yeah, and Avery Oiterman and Giuseppe De Toy were signed as free agents. Then we move over to New England. Not many changes here. Foster Dewey, Andrew Quattrin, Cole Keith, Kyle Bailey was a new signing. Connor Keys, Josh Larson, Ethan Fryer, Piers von Dazelden, and Gabe Casey. Those two were new signings. Ben Lesage and Isaac Olsen return over to NOLA. With the retirement of Alec Harrod, Callum Botcher was picked up in the expansion draft and has signed for the team. Over DC, we are seeing the return of Cali Martinez and Graydon Bowd. Logan Widener has been signed, and Tyler Rowland was picked up not by DC, but actually by LA. And obviously, he didn't sign with them and eventually decided to sign with the Flags. So he's going with them. Speaking of LA, they have signed Connor Grindle, who was drafted to Dallas but has gone with RFC LA. They also have the continuation of some guys from Rugby ATL, including Connor Young, Matt Heaton, Seth Purdy, and Jack Shaw. Regan O'Gorman was a trade made with the Free Jacks, and Andrew Coe was also picked up from the dispersal draft from New York. In San Diego, Justice Daru remains with the team. We may be seeing the another mid-season re-signing of Michael Smith, but that is yet to be seen. Further north in the Pacific Northwest, with the Seattle Seawolves, Nakai Penny and Reed Watkins return for another season, and Scott Bowers is picked up from the collegiate draft. Okay, three drafts that I've got to keep track of. And over in Utah, with Emerson Pryor being the sole Canadian on that team, not anymore. Spencer Jones was traded from New England. New signings of Noah Bain and Sam Reimer. And in the dispersal draft, Tyler Wong was originally set to go to Miami. However, he has not gone there and he has been picked up by the Warriors. But in the case of going full circle, Robbie Povey has returned to Utah from that dispersal draft. Originally did play, I think, 4 games for Utah, then moved to Houston for the 2021 season. Was obviously meant to go to the Arrows, but never was meant to be. So yeah, so Utah going from one Canadian to 6. So it should be definitely interesting with a grand total of 46 players playing in MLR at the moment, representing Canada in 2024, and a total of 9 Arrows players that were now in other teams. I was going to say drafted, but I'm also including like
To
Lucas Rumble.
clarify, when we're saying 9 Arrows players, though, it's 9 Arrows that would have been on the team in 2024.
Yes.
So,
So
like Shane O'Leary, for example, I'm not well,
yeah.
I'm not counting as a
Yeah,
2024
Shane O'Leary
Arrow.
was going to Miami before anything happened. So yeah.
And there's a couple other former Arrows, obviously, that Stu mentioned in
Yeah.
that you mentioned while you were like kind of rhyming off the rosters there,
Yeah.
that weren't gonna play for the Arrows. The actual guy, like I think this is the one thing that is like it is a little concerning, and it's obvious it's not surprising given that the Toronto Arrows are no longer an MLR team, but it is a little concerning, right? Is that the Arrows obviously were a team that had like regularly would have 20 to 30 Canadians on their team, right? Like 80%, 80 to 90% of that roster on a lot of years was Canadian, right? And there's only 9 players that would have been on the Arrows in
Mhm.
2024 that are currently on an MLR roster or have been confirmed or whatever to
Yeah.
be on an MLR roster, right? So that's Flesh, Rumball, Richardson, Ben, Botcher, Roland, Grindal, Wong, and Povey.
Mm.
Right. So um there's a lot of guys that signed for the Arrows that haven't signed in the MLR yet. Obviously, when they did the dispersal draft, only 10 Arrows were drafted. 9 of them were Canadian. The other one was Sam Malcolm, who got selected with the last pick by NOLA. Be cool to see Sammy back in MLR. But I'm not sure if that was just kind of NOLA throwing a dart out there and being like, well, let's see if we can get this guy to come um with the last pick, because most of the guys that got selected in the dispersal draft were domestic players. Um, and then obviously Andrew Coe is the other guy that got selected through the
Yeah.
dispersal draft from New York, but 46 Canadians as of right now. So that's the numbers definitely down from last season. And it's not surprising because the arrows are gone, but it does kind of show the impact that the arrows do have, even though you do have teams like New England, Los Angeles, Dallas that have all, and Utah now that do have like a lot of Canadians, right? But the overall numbers has definitely dropped because the arrows are no longer in the league. Hopefully we get some news of more Canadian signings in the what are we, 6 weeks out from the season starting, I guess now? 5 or 6
Yeah.
weeks.
Well, it's the start of March,
Yeah.
so
I don't know. I'm bad at math. Whatever. But like, yeah, like I just hope that that's, there's maybe a couple more names that can trickle out there, but
mm,
that's kind of where we're at right now. So, um, if by the La Rouge Rugby rule that the team with the most Canadians wins, place your bets on New England, Dallas. I guess a New England Dallas final. New England Dallas final.
New England, Dallas. I'll say New England to
Dallas
top
Dallas
to
LA
East.
Western Conference final. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Well, and Utah to be in the eliminators as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see at least. But hopefully we can add some more Canadian names to these rosters, except for Anthem, because well, you
Yeah,
know.
Anthem.
Anthem,
Cool.
yeah. Anyway, let's move
Anthem
on to
just
a
makes
team
me
that is
jealous.
guaranteed to
Yeah.
have a number of Canadians on them, and that is the Vancouver Highlanders. So the Highlanders announced that they are going to be revealing their roster over, I believe, like 12 weeks at the start of the year. And so since they've done that, they've announced 7 names as of the time of recording, which is January 23rd. So we have in the order of Highlanders, number 1, Ollie Knott; 2, Sam Mace; 3, James Biss; 4, Dakota McMullen; 5, Paul Cellini; 6, Josh Thiel; and 7, Thomas Davidson. So some of you may recognize some of the names. Ollie Knott, Sam Mace, and Paul Cellini were all former Arrows. Sam Mace was signed to the team, but I think only appeared in academy roles and was the academy captain and was the captain when they won the Coast to Coast Cup in 2023. Um, Paul Cellini, obviously the first Arrows player to reach 50 caps, and Ollie Knott made a number of appearances in for the Arrows
Yeah.
um, over the past couple of years. And then you have someone like Josh Thiel, who has recently played for the San Diego Legion. And we
Cool.
have guys like Dakota McMullen, James Biss, who've come into the Rugby Canada camps. And yeah, so
I think
teams slowly coming together. They at least have a team for sevens at least at the moment, but obviously more names will be announced as the weeks go on. Derek, what do you make of the names signed so far?
Yeah, I mean, like I like it. I think first of all, shout out to everybody that it was 6 weeks ago, I guess, but that everybody that listened to our last episode where we interviewed Ralph McRae and Curry Hitchborn from the Vancouver Highlanders, kind of explaining, what that program's gonna all be about. It's like easily our most listened to episode. So that's cool. I think people are kind of, in a bit of a dark year, like 2023, I guess all things considered, a bit of a dark year for Canadian rugby. The national team, men's, at least for men's rugby, men's national team not performing all that well. A whole bunch of questions around that, and then obviously the sad news of the Arrows no longer being a MLR team kind of hit. So it was a tough way to kind of end 2023, but I don't know. I think people maybe like the idea that, Canadian rugby is not dying anytime soon, and it's nice to get a little bit of hope sprinkled in there. So I'm glad everybody enjoyed that Highlanders episode. Um, but moving on to the squad here, I do like it. I think like it's so far it's a good mix of like MLR guys and like young players that seem like they should be taking shots at putting their hand up for the national team selection shortly. So I mean, ultimately, I think that's a really solid mix. Um, I think the name that jumped out to me the most out of all this, though, is Paul Cialini, who obviously did not play in the MOR last year. So kind of nice to see him back in a major like the Vancouver Highlanders don't like the word pro, so I'll call him high performance, I guess. High performance setup. So it's nice to see him back. He's obviously a legendary hero. So that's kind of that's the name that kind of jumped out to me the most. All the first seven names have done is get me excited for the rest of the squad to see how that shapes up. I did just mention how few 2024 arrows seem to have actually landed somewhere else in Major League Rugby, or at least that have been announced as landing somewhere else yet. So I'm curious if more of them are going to pop up with the Highlanders or not. Who knows? But um, I don't know. I look forward to it every time the Highlanders like roll out a new name. I love that they're kind of photoshopping all the guys into a Highlanders jersey, so I think
Yeah.
get a little bit of a taste of what that's going to look like. I'm all for tartan on a rugby jersey, by the way. So I hope they do kind of rock with that theme. Tartan is way better than camo. So I hope they do rock with that. I don't know. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to finding out who they're going to be playing. Um, I think there's a lot to be excited about with the Vancouver Highlanders. So I mean,
Yeah.
it should be good. I guess on a side note too, the Atlantic Selects because they're I guess a similar level.
Mm.
If that's
Yeah.
really
Well, the
the right word.
privateers now.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say they rebranded to the Privateers. They got the absolutely sick logo.
Yeah.
The ship looks amazing. They have they rebranded that. Um, it's great to see some people putting out like high performance rugby initiatives um in Canada, the spread across the country a little bit. Right, especially since some of the biggest news to end the year was that we lost the Toronto Arrows, right? So
Yeah.
um it's nice to see that there's still a lot of groups looking to make high performance rugby happen in Canada,
Mm.
and I'm excited to see how the Highlanders evolve and how their tournament
Mm.
is going to evolve as well, right? So see
Yeah.
who those opponents end up being, where they end up playing and stuff. It's honestly the Vancouver Highlanders I think are might be one of the things I'm most excited about right now,
Yeah.
as at least as a Canadian rugby fan. And I should say the Atlantic Selects I will count in the selects and the or not the selects anymore. The privateers, excuse me, the privateers and the Highlanders I think are two
Mm.
things that we can kind of be really excited about right now as Canadian
Yeah.
fans. It was
So just a bit of information from the Atlantic Privateers when they announced their rebranding, is that they had games planned against the USA Hawks in Charlotte, North Carolina on April 6th.
so Anthem Rugby.
Let me just double
I
check.
was gonna say,
Uh,
are the Charlotte Hawks a thing anymore, or did they just
well,
still a thing? I just
I
heard
don't know.
Anthem
This
Rugby Carolina, right? Like,
Yeah, so I think when it was talking about Anthem is that
yeah,
they're not specifically targeting under 23s at the moment because they know they have to be competitive within the league, but they are giving younger guys, opportunities to come through. So yeah, April 6th is when they said they'd be famous the Hawks. Anthem is away in Utah
mm,
that weekend. So
I
maybe there is the USA Hawks. Maybe it's a different team or unit, and they're gonna help identify that.
yeah,
Guess we'll just have to see. But they are also planned to face the New England Independents and Boston, Massachusetts. Date to be confirmed. Despite the Arrows folding, the Privateers are working to ensure that the Arrows Academy remains in some capacity. Obviously, with the announcement that the Arrows Holdings Group and LLC have gone bankrupt, it looks as though if a enterprise is put together, it won't be known as the Arrows or the Academy. Um, but they're hoping that whatever enterprise comes about does compete in the 2024 Coast to Coast Cup as well as the Vancouver Highlanders, and that the Privateers are negotiating to play the Highlanders in the 2024 Rugby Players Challenge. And now that's a lot of games, that they've got planned coming up. But again, they are a few months away. So if you are looking to watch any rugby in the meantime, we have the Sevens, which will be on Rugby Pass TV. It's a free service similar to the Rugby Network. You can just sign up for that. The Six Nations and their full contact documentary is actually being released tomorrow from when we're recording. So probably a day or
Yesterday.
two after this comes out. Yeah. So by the time this comes out,
Yesterday.
the episodes will hopefully be available on Netflix, and we will be talking about that in our next episode. The Premiership returns on Sportsnet, and I believe the South African games for the URC are available as well. And the Premiership Women's Rugby Game of the Week will be available on the Rugby Network. So there's lots of rugby still coming up at the moment. You just have to wait a little bit longer for Canadian rugby. But if you enjoyed this new episode for 2024, be sure to check out more episodes as well as our written pieces on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find our podcast on Spotify, S4P, and Apple Podcasts. We have a YouTube channel at The Rouge Rugby with episodes of the podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to stay up to date with all our videos. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, Twitter, we're not calling it X, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, all at The Rouge Rugby. Derek, where can people find you on social media?
At Percent the Jet across all social media platforms.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Derek, thank you for joining me, and thank you for joining us for the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we focus on real Canadian rugby. As we said, we are back for more in 2024. We hope you can join us again next time.